Welcome back, kids. Today I have with me here Mr. Damien Lamar, local musician, singer, talented businessman. You're just all that. How many hats do you wear?
I wear lots of hats because the creator likes to keep me stylish. Yes.
One of the things I wanted to talk about first is your more recent project that you're doing, ProfessorClock.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about the evolution of that, how it came about. And...
It's a really sad story. It's sad.
Okay,
I lost my grandmother back in 2012.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And leading up to her death, the few last years of her life, I had the privilege of spending time in her house. And there was no internet, no cable. I think she had television on and she was watching Wheel of Fortune, you know, her programs. And I was off the grid in a weird kind of way. So
Right.
I had my laptop with GarageBand and a bunch of little apps I downloaded on my iPhone at the time, and I made music off grid.
There you go.
And I started, and probably about, I'd say, 27 minutes in, I realized, okay, I'm done with this volume, and that was when she passed. So I was mixing and mastering and doing all my own stuff to distract myself from grief.
Right.
So next volume went through a horrible, shitty breakup. It was a shitty breakup. And lesson learned, made more music.
Well, there you go.
It was lighter because, you know, crazy situation. And then the last volume, I was moving. I ended up moving. And that whole transition kind of was more enlightening. And that volume's called Master Intelligence. So Light Travel, Moter Sanctum, and Master Intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized I had a whole body of work. Like I had a score.
Right.
And the music came before the idea or the concept of who ProfessorClock was. But like, what, ProfessorClock? Like, that's crazy. It's just this weird, interesting code name for a time traveler who just so happens to be on Earth present day. And he's here from the future, or from the past, from the burnings of the Great Library of Alexandria.
Oh. One
of the largest ports in Egypt at the time. Alexander the Great was, he was the creator and the builder of this big Mecca city, and people would come, and here's this time traveler who actually knew how to time travel. And
Interesting.
Here he is in the future wondering what happened to the Great Library of Alexandria because it was burned down over several hundred years. And like all of the knowledge, information on maybe Stonehenge or the pyramids, the underwater pyramids in the China Sea, like all of this information was in this library, but some dumbass decided to burn it.
Oh boy.
So that's the story.
Right.
That's the music that kind of tells the story. So I've been writing for about 11 years off and on.
Mm-hmm. Well, listening to it too, it's got, I've heard several portions of it, and some of it's got this ethereal feel to it. Oh, a lot of it does, really.
Yeah.
It's deep when you sit and listen to it.
I hope so.
It is. It is.
Yeah, it's like, like I'm a musician and I listen to a lot of, I love Erykah Badu. I love, like, right now I'm listening to a lot of Moses Sumney, a lot of Leanne LaHavis. At the time, I didn't want to listen to any specific artist. I wanted to just create my own sound. I wanted to be my own producer and not have to rely on other musicians to create stuff for me because I didn't have that accessibly available at the time. So I started creating my own stuff. And it just kind of evolved. So there were like sonic sounds of solace, stuff that I wanted to hear to make me feel better about grieving.
Yeah.
And this year, when the pandemic happened, I answered. Like, I felt the need, this like crazy sense of urgency to like, okay, I got to put this out. I have to. And I released the whole thing as unpolished and very, very synthetic and unquantized and unmastered in some cases. Very imperfect. I released it because I want it to be literally sort of like the foundational basis for something that could actually be scored by, a chamber or an actual symphony.
Sure.
So,
I can see that.
If you're out there in contrast land and you want to help me make this project more than what it is, holla at your boy.
That's right.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I created it, and it's very synthetic, and I want to make it very organic, and I have other amazing plans for it as well.
Well, fact of the matter is, we do have someone from the symphony coming in here.
Oh, okay.
And-
There's a Yiddish term. I learned some Yiddish some years ago. There's a Yiddish term
We do.
called
we
shidduch. Make a shidduch, like a joining happen, a meeting of the minds.
We could probably make that happen. We could probably make that happen. When they give me a date, I'll let you know, and you can just come over and shake hands with them.
Cool. Okay. And we can talk music.
There you
notes.
go. Yeah. Now, as far as your live performances, we already talked that the pandemic has really that's everybody. The live bands have been hit hard. Some of the bands have taken up GoFundMe's. A lot of musicians locally that still play every weekend still have day jobs. But at the same time, some of them lost their day gigs too.
Yeah.
So I mean, they're really hurting, and even though a lot of them are doing those virtual concerts, and a lot of them have a giving link where you can give to the band while watching and all that, it's still not making up the difference that they lost.
Absolutely, yeah.
Not even close.
Yeah.
And another thing too, one of the, if I'm not mistaken, one of the new upcoming things with Facebook, you won't be able to make money off of your videos on Facebook anymore.
Yeah, I've heard.
So I mean,
everything is like the whole playing field, for lack of a better word. Everything has changed.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of artists that are literally rising to the occasion, creating their own lanes, creating their own avenues, and
they've had to.
Yeah, had to. But what I'm finding is what more than likely what's happening is that the conversation is starting to shift, and people are beginning to really communicate and talk more. So there's apps like Stereo. There's an app called Clubhouse, and these apps are very conversationalist. There's a lot of podcasts that are on the rise right now. People are in their cars. They're spending more time at home. They kind of want to be more plugged in so they don't have to hear the family drama all the time.
TikTok is
taking off. I mean, yeah, it's very, very interesting. So how a musician still thrives and survives, it's still to be determined.
Right.
I mean, I think one of my I take lessons from a playbook from, like I mentioned, Erykah Badu earlier. She in March, when she found out that she's a touring artist, she tours 8 months out of the year. She couldn't tour, so she had to basically come up with a way to figure. She's got this whole ecosystem of musicians that solely support on her. Pay my bills, pay my, I got to feed my family, and they're not touring, so they don't get paid. So she had to create our own revenue stream. So she created a website, and she set up a paywall and has people coming directly to her and took out the middleman. But then you still have the middleman to pay for it because somebody's got to set up the paywall.
Yeah.
So, but it's a process of literally creating your own, really owning your own brand, owning your message, and sticking to that. Right. And I think even though it's just 365, it's been less than 365 days, but it's been a real shitty.
Yes, it has.
300 plus days.
Yeah.
And
it's been a long year.
It's been a long year, but at the same time, those of us who are grinding, those of us who are creating content, those of us we'll have the on the other side of this, we have a more of a stronger foundational basis for what we're trying to do.
Right.
And I think we got to look at it long term.
Yeah.
And and just get through. Yeah. Just get through it.
Yeah. Early on in the pandemic, when restaurants were closing and venues were closing and bands were being canceled and all this stuff, it seemed as though everybody kind of got serious for a couple of months, and they were, going by the rules and doing all that, and then they got that comfort zone. And kind of laxed up, and then we had spikes, and it's not going to be over in a few months.
Right.
We realized back in July, well, it's not going to be over in a few months. And then they're saying November, and then there was the other side that was saying, oh no, it'll be over, But in all reality, it's like you say, long term. this is going to have a lasting impact on everybody.
Yeah.
Um,
But you know something.
now some people have definitely thrived. You know,
Yeah,
some
Oh, yeah.
businesses have thrived
For sure. Yeah.
But
I feel like, you know, even with the individuals that have thrived and those who haven't, it's like this is your opportunity to like rise to the occasion. And those of you didn't know anything, like there are all these platforms, Zoom, WebEx. I think Cisco bought WebEx years ago. I was using WebEx back in 2004.
Yeah,
The same type of platform then, and people are starting to use Zoom like it's the new trendy thing. It was there, like this technology has already been there.
Right.
We just didn't make ourselves available to it.
Right.
And use it the way we could have.
And now in the last several months, I've started seeing a lot of new platforms for live streaming too.
Yep.
There's new live streaming platforms that allow you to stream to multiple social media networks simultaneously. Whereas that was a little bit difficult 6 months ago.
Right.
But now they're like almost dime a dozen. There's 3 or 4 of them right now that are running ads on Facebook.
Yeah.
Subscription services. You know. So yeah.
That's what's king right now too.
Subscriptions.
Yeah, but you don't have
And
just
the people
your
with
one
podcasts.
cable bill anymore. You got your 5 subscription bills.
Yeah, and the people that have podcasts, you know, have they've been doing it for a while. You know, they revert to subscription services too, and at different levels, Patreon and you know, those other ones like that. The original Contrast project was a podcast on Patreon several years ago.
And then it evolved.
It evolved.
Nice.
We decided to start doing video and having guests over, and we're enjoying the heck out of it.
Well, I appreciate. Thank you for having me here. Like, I appreciate the platform. Seriously.
Yeah. Well, stick around. We'll be back with Damien in just a second.
The recording of the project began in the fall of 2011 and has been built using an iPad, a mixer, sound editing tools, and some virtual instruments. Created for true listeners and those who appreciate the art of visual sound design, the New Adventures of ProfessorClock series is an intentionally mixed and unmastered organic project built from a structured compilation of intensely produced music with ultrasonically crafted sounds, elements, and energies. Each track is intentionally created in their technical and sonic imperfections and are strategically perfect. To date, the project is currently 3 volumes, which expand across several sectors of human spacetime, offering the audible story of Professor Clock. The initial volume, Light Travel, opens with compositions that are woven together to tell the story of Professor Emmett Clock, codename Professor Clock, a former human and a sentient life form from a parallel universe who knows of ancient secrets of our present world. The volume ends with his descent to planet Earth during the sunrise of Trianta, the town of Ilassos near the edge of the Homonym Gulf in Greece. Volume 2 continues the atmospheric, psychedelic, and transient sounds as Professor Clock travels into the sacred place through a wormhole called Moter Sanctum. This volume is about transitioning into a new paradigm and experiencing a new way of thinking. Professor Clock has traveled back from the year 2120 to the present day to warn us of self-imposed impending dangers. He seeks to remind us what we, as the human race, have destroyed through acts of religious wars brought on by ignorance and ego. Professor Clock knows about the artifacts, writings, and apocryphal prophecies that were destroyed during the onset and burnings of the Library of Alexandria.
bypass the computer. The magnetic field erased the program. When we reach 20,000 megahertz, we throw this switch, and a powerful magnetic field vibrates these forks at a precise frequency.
The most recent volume in the series sets the stage for Professor Clock's mental programming and conditioning by sentient beings from a not-so-distant galaxy. Professor Clock realizes that he is not bound by the constraints of human space-time, but his mission is to impart, implement, and program master intelligence into the fibers of the human race so that we can undo missteps that caused us to err in judgment and repeat the cycle of tradition and the way things have always been done. Volume 4, 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 0, elaborates more on the narrative of the project and provides a detailed account of Professor Clock's travels to the Library of Alexandria, where he secretly stored writings and blueprints. Professor Clock created a temporal geometron relocation device that allowed him to forward jump into multi-dimensions in what is now known as Lania Kea. Although there were no accounts of the places he visited during his exile, the world at large knows what happened during the burnings of the great Library of Alexandria. Professor Clock arrived in the present day from the future, the year 2120, seeking to find his book, where he stored the key to his time travels. The great library, as he knew it, along with the blueprints to his travel capsule, were no longer there.
We're back with Damien Lamar, and we wanted to talk a little bit. We were talking about all the music and everything from before, and your Professor Clock project,
Yes.
and how interesting that is.
Thank you.
But there's also something very interesting in your life. Your day gig.
My day
over
gig
at the Garden Club.
Yeah, so I sort of, this was a weird time. I was leaving Friends of Hemming Park. Just the right timing. And I was contacted by the very first executive director, Denise Reagan, who she and I sat we sit on the board together, party, benefit, and jam. stands for PB&J.
PB&J.
And she said, she had been appointed the first ever executive director in the history of the Garden Club. And I'm like, that is pretty cool.
That is cool.
And she's like, and there is an opportunity. We're looking for an operations manager. Are you interested? And I'm like, okay, let me think about this. And I thought about it, and I got back to her. I'm like, yeah, I'd like to do that. So I've been, the last 2 portions of my life over the last, 7 years, I've worked for historic nonprofit organizations. The first one was I3 Jacks, now named James Weldon Johnson Park.
Right.
And of course the Garden Club of Jacksonville, which is going to be celebrating its centennial in March 2022. So 100 years. And I'm the very first African-American male leader in its history.
Wow.
First ever facilities manager. And me and my amazing team have done some really transformative things on that facility.
I've been over there and seen some of the work, physical work that you've done on the building. It is remarkable.
Yeah, and my most recent, it was so interesting. We recently, now that there's this downtime and things are slowing down and a lot of events and activities because of the whole pandemic, a lot of people haven't been able to meet there. The Garden Club did not get a lot of rental revenue at all this year. I mean, we haven't had a lot of things on the books.
Right.
And because of that, we've just used this as an opportunity to start doing some spring cleaning. Just kind of continue from spring when the pandemic happened,
when it started,
and just keep spring cleaning the whole 2020. And when I originally got there, I was confronted with this whole list of all of this stuff that needed to happen. This needs to be fixed. Why don't you consider doing this? We need to do this. Blah blah blah. So Dorian, the hurricane that never made landfall in the U.S. but ruined the Bahamas. Those 4 or 5 days I worked from home, and I literally kind of compiled the entire list and prioritized it. And then I just did another one. This particular list, I think we came in at about 176 tasks.
Wow.
And we scheduled them whether they need to be done annually, biannually, twice, bi-monthly, weekly, or if it's a one-time project, and then I prioritize that. I'm really good at project management. I studied under a Six Sigma black belt.
Okay.
And I've learned a lot. That's an old methodology for project management, and because of it, you do one manageable task at a time.
Right.
I mean, you look back and go damn, we did all that? What? Are you kidding me?
The place does look great since you've been there.
Amazing.
It really does.
It's amazing. I mean, the tide is turned, but the most interesting thing happened because how do we begin telling the story about the Capitol campaign? How do we get people inspired about the future? Okay, yeah, we've raised this beautiful, elegant space up, and we've spruced it up, and we've cleaned it up, and made it more visibly attractive for people to rent.
Right.
But what are the long-term plans for what's really needs to happen on that ground? You got the Comer, which is a direct correlation of the Miss Nina Mae Holden Comer started that's where her home was, but she started the Garden Club in 1922. How do we take the gardens of the past and create the gardens of the future? So you have these beautiful art and gardens at Comer, and they've done a beautiful job even after
After the storm, yeah.
Yeah, I mean the a lot of money went into that whole project to make that very resilient. But then, how do we do the same type of grounds at the Garden Club? So we've a gentleman by the name of Rick Periani. He's a landscape architect. Created this beautiful conceptual embellishment of the park of the facility. And with a circular drive, making it even more ADA accessible. Incorporating that bus stop that's right there in front of River Park.
Right there in front of it, yeah.
And using every portion of that facility for educational purposes, and to also to monetize it for rental revenue as well.
During this pandemic time, you've done some virtual programs through there too.
Yeah. That was interesting. We received a grant from the Jesse DuPont Fund, which allowed us to literally, how do we reach people that have never been to the Garden Club? That a lot of these ladies were coming to meetings. When I first started, I gained quite a bit of weight. You know, with
Bringing
those
that
little
food
finger
back.
sandwiches and the little cheese bites and the cookies and the, you know, the all the little punch, you know,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
and you know, they would bring you here. I made you a plate. Thanks so much. Okay, so those days are gone. They're just
Right.
food. There's no food. We don't do that. And because we hadn't had an opportunity for people to sort of meet there, how do we take the message and bring in key community components? You know, so we've had a class on microgreens.
Right.
Jalen Goss did I think she's 21 years old, and she did a whole presentation on microgreens. We've done houseplant parenthood. We've done the art of gourd making, and like all these cool different things that everybody can sort of take away from. And we have been building up our YouTube channel in the process.
Right.
So we've reached new audiences because it's virtual. We have people watching, you know, from Seattle and LA and all over the US.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And these are free programs that, because of a grant, we were able to get the technology that we need to be able to do it. And
And now that you're getting the hang of it, and
Oh, yeah.
you can
Oh,
start
yeah.
getting the hang of it. You would think that, you know, probably smart to just keep on doing it.
Yeah,
Even
so
even after the facility opens up to the
Absolutely.
public again.
Yeah. And
Just
we
keep 'em
started doing
going.
hybrid. I mean, especially when they opened up some of the restrictions about gatherings.
Yes, yes.
And we wanted people that felt comfortable enough to be able to come. We have enough space in the beautiful ballroom to do social distancing, so the chairs are spaced apart, and we still do Zoom at the same time. And I'm the guy behind the screen making all the technology happen.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool.
That's
It's
cool.
been
That is
fun.
really good.
Yeah.
Well, you know, like we were saying in the previous segment, you know, people have, you know, found a way during this pandemic. People
Resistance is futile.
have- That's right. And resilience is the way.
Bingo. I love it. Let's put those two together. That's great.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So true.
Well, I tell you what, Damien, it's been a pleasure having
Yeah,
you here
man.
with us today.
Thank you so
we
much.
got to have you back.
Yeah, Tracy,
okay.
this has been good.
So we'll be